Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. In the countries where we have democracy, the way to, elect officials that would represent us and will do the job for us, um, the people who run for office, they are obviously dependent on the votes and the opinion of the electorate. The opinion of the electorate obviously is the one that will get you in the office or not. So you pay attention to opinion polls. Therefore, if you run for office and you say something, you immediately look at the opinion polls that would, reflect your popularity or lack of. And then, if that, whatever you said, is unpopular, you change it and then you become more popular. And then again, you say something, you look at the opinion polls, and again, if that's unpopular, you change it and you say something of the opposite, and you become popular with certain kind of groups. That's how you do it in a democracy. That means you really can't be saying what you really believe in and be unpopular, even though whatever you might say is the thing that would save the society. Therefore, you tell them what they want to hear, you get in power, and once you get in power, what do? Implement whatever you think that would save the society. Why? Because you think, well, those guys don't know better. Basically, this is the way democracy runs. Why? Because you look at certain elected officials, they get elected, popular vote, and when they get elected, they do whatever they want. And then their polls, no, their approval rating drops. So let's say they were elected with 80%. Great, good job. And then after a year, they're like 20. Why are they at 20%? Because they do what they have to do, not what those guys voted them for. They disagree, saying, "Well, what do you think about my performance in this particular issue?" 20%. How come? Well, because the guy who got elected got a different set of, how should I put it, agendas provided by, other interests or simply his convictions. They say, well, I'm going to get elected and I'm going to do what I'm going to do there, not what I was elected for. That's democracy, okay? Whereas when you get empowered through different means, you do whatever you want and then you don't listen to anyone. Well, that's a different story. The outcome is different. Now, what do I have here? I have an opinion poll that would tell us about what the US population thinks about the war and about the president's job, in relation to the Ukrainian war. The opinion polls changed, so the preferences obviously changed, the numbers changed. And that's very important because, again, you were elected, your approval rating is dropping, and you keep doing what you've been doing instead of saying, wait a second, I don't like what's going on. But the president, Biden, still has 2 years to be in the office. I don't think he's going to be running again. I think he's going to be phased out. All right. This article comes from Russia Today, and it is from January 21st, 2023. Poll indicates big change in American attitude to Ukraine war aid. 33% believe the US is, and I'm quoting, doing too much. So 33% are fed up. They say, doing too much to help Kiev. And this is a Quinnipiac survey. It's QUINNIPIAC. So this is the survey I'm going to use because they use it. Now, a third of Americans believe that the US has gone too far in its support for Ukraine in the present conflict, according to a new poll released on Wednesday. This is a sharp increase from late February days after the conflict broke out, when just 7% said so. So, if you think that 30%, it's only 1/3 of the population as nothing, I would refer you to the War of Independence in the United States of America, which was supported by a third of population. So, you see, a third of population is actually a lot, because when how should I put it, the people from the colonies, the settlers from the colonies, the 13 colonies, initials, no, they organized the revolution, the American Revolution, about 1/3 were for the revolution, one third was against the revolution. Those were the loyalists. And in between, people who did not know anything about it, did not care, or had no opinion. Obviously, they didn't interview and how conducted opinion polls on this and that, but it's what I learned in United States universities, so must be true. Now, according to a Quinnipiac University national survey, 33% of adult respondents think Washington is doing too much to help Kiev while 21% say US is doing too little. 38% believe the amount of American aid is just right. Okay, so this is what we have right now. 1,659 adults nationwide were surveyed between January 11 and January 15th this year. By comparison, in a similar poll released on February 28, 2022, so a year ago, 4 days after large-scale hostilities began, only 7% of Americans said the US was doing too much to help Ukraine, while 45% believed Washington aid was inadequate. 37% thought the support being provided to Kiev was sufficient. So 45% believed Washington's aid was inadequate. That means not enough. 37% thought the support being provided to Kiev was sufficient, and 7% said it's too much. And that changed now. So the new survey also shows a total of 44% of Americans approve of the way US President Joe Biden is handling the Ukraine conflict, with respondents sharply divided along partisan lines. 47% disapprove of Biden's actions on Ukraine, with 73% of Republicans supporting this view as opposed to just 16% of Democrats, right? So 47% disapprove of Biden's actions of Ukraine, with 73 Republicans supporting this view, as opposed to only 16 of Democrats. However, the poll also found that only 3% of Americans think the fighting in Ukraine is, and I'm quoting, the most urgent issue facing the country today. 3%. 3%. So what does that tell you? When these guys come in front of the TV cameras and tell you, or Biden tells you about if Ukraine falls, Russia will invade everybody and the whole world is going to turn into a, I don't know, blah, 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 tra-la-la-lu-lu-lu, 3% think that that's the most important thing. 3%, according to the survey. But that could be probably a margin of error of what? 3% plus or minus? So that means zero if it's the other way, the error. Anyway, now, the most pressing problems named were inflation, 35%, immigration, 10%, and gun violence, 8%. I'm pretty sure I can bring some more, they will get more. But remember, inflation, so that means what? Their standard of living, their lives, not the Ukrainian lives or Russian lives. And I think, you live in a family, that's your family, you should care about your family more than unknown family, wouldn't you? Shouldn't you? I think so. I mean, who thinks differently? Well, why don't you live with that family? Because that means those people in those families have to care about your family more than they care about their family. So that means we can swap. We can't, how should I put it, care equally. For my family, I care the same way as the neighbor's family. It's, you know what I mean? What are we going to do? What? We're going to be George Orwell's 1984? Anyway, let's move on and see what's going on here. The top US priority should be funding and arming Ukraine so it can beat Russia on the battlefield. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell stated in December. Did you hear that? The top priority, Mitch McConnell, told us that actually what we believe 3% of us think it should be the priority. He says that. What does that tell you? He's not living in reality. He's living in his reality with things that are more important than us. When he's going to get voted in the office, which I think was about a year or 2 years ago, so he's got 4 more years. I'm assuming he's got a 6-year term. I don't know. He's an old senator, so I know his term. So let's say 5 years. Let's put it 5 years. After about 4 years, and the things go the same way with 3%, he's going to change the tune. He's not going to say that's the most important thing. If he's going to have only 3% saying, yeah, Ukraine war is the most important thing, he's not going to say that. He's going to again, make polls of opinion polls, and listen. Hey, what's that? The most important thing for the youth population is Ukraine. Let's see what the population says. Oh, 3%. We change. No, I think inflation is the most important. Oh, 40%. Yeah, we're going to go with that one. Does that sound like real society, or this sounds like weasel society? I think the second. My opinion could be or assessment. Anyway, so as I said, so he said that Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, who's a weasel, stated in December, yes, that funding and arming Ukraine is to beat Russia on the battlefield is a top U.S. priority. Several other Republicans argued that the crisis of the U.S. southern border, which has seen record numbers of illegal migrants crossing, should be the main focus. Since Russia began its special military operation, the U.S. contributed about $27.5 billion in military assistance to Ukraine as of November 20th. Things changed. Washington has also committed approximately $10 billion in humanitarian aid and over $15 billion in financial assistance, according to the Kiel Institute in World Economy. Kiel, I think, is Germany. Last month, the U.S. House of Representatives narrowly rejected a bill calling for an audit of economic and military assistance to Kiev. Narrowly rejected a bill calling for it. The massive scale of U.S. military aid has reportedly put the Pentagon's own law enforcement agency on high alert to black market sales of weaponry and other potential fraud. Remember, this comes from Russia Today, so put your Russia Today glasses on and discard these kind of things. But anyway, it seems that's a trend where Americans are more concerned about their standard of living than things that happen over there. That's one, and that shows by the opinion poll. They say, okay, I think it's too much, because you realize at one point that you have billions to provide to another family somewhere else, and some of your children are starving, or your roads are full of holes, or your hospitals are cold or dirty. The schools are from 1950s and so on, and you don't have money to pay, the basic salaries of people that are really essential workers, which I know a lot of them, underpaid, overworked. This is what it is. So you have money for that, but you don't have money for this. And that sounds familiar to my British friends as well, which they send, 500 and some million dollars to Ukraine, but then they rejected and they say, we can't pay you nurses this much, we have to pay only this, because we simply don't have the money. That's what they said. But they gave 530 some million pounds to Ukraine as aid for their government, and it's the same as the United States. The Ukrainian government functions because of certain kind of taxes coming from certain kind of countries. Otherwise, we'd be bankrupt under these circumstances. It's true, their salaries are much less than here, but you can use it here to pay some people that really, really function in your family first. I mean, I can go on and on and on with this. The thing is, the trend is obvious, and things will not change until, some people get a lot of this and a lot of other stuff, and then when it's about the election again, they're going to again conduct some opinion polls, see what the problems are, and then they will talk about the problems. They again get elected for 5 years and do whatever they want. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.